But let's go back to the one thing I asked you about earlier, Matt. So this is kind of important. There were a lot of people who went to the Capitol in DC. They went to the Capitol on the 6th, and they found their way inside the building through no storming of anything. There's videos where the doors have been opened and people were bumbling and confused and walked in while the cops nodded and tipped their hats and even took selfies with them. Some of these people are being charged with what, like misdemeanors?
Pretty disorderly conduct on Capitol grounds, unlawful entry of a restricted building. And, it goes beyond just the charges themselves, because what the effect of this is, it's destroying these people's lives. A week ago, I sent on Look Ahead letterhead a letter to the acting attorney general and the FBI director asking them to drop all charges against nonviolent basically trespassers, protesters who happen to find themselves inside the Capitol building, because this is a political persecution. This isn't just routine prosecution of crimes. This is persecution, the level that the federal government is going after these people and destroying their lives. And the test of it is simple, is that over and over again, when the left did this, they repeatedly did this during Kavanaugh's confirmation hearings. They stormed the buildings.
All of them.
Yeah, and they intimidated senators. They tried to interfere with what the Senate was doing. All of the people who did this were, if they were arrested at all, they were taken off site and given a fine of $35 to $50 and let go to do it again. But this happens, and the reaction, now granted, I'm not talking about people who did true violent actions or really tried to destroy property. This is solely targeted at the people who happen to walk in. And all of these charges require something called mens rea, meaning you had to know that it was a crime to do it. You had to know you weren't allowed to go in there into a building the public's routinely allowed to on almost any given day of the week outside a COVID period, right? It's a public building. They walked in, they took some selfies, they left. And this letter, it's on lookaheadamerica.org, the website. So I go through all the legal arguments. But here's a problem, and this occurred to me as I was researching this. I spoke to multiple Republican attorneys. One gentleman, Republican attorneys, one of the most prominent Republican attorneys in the entire country. And I said, well, is anybody helping these folks out with attorneys? Because I'm hearing some of them are getting trouble. And he told me that two problems. Number one, Republican or conservative-leaning attorneys don't have a lot of practice with rioters like the left does. Because the left, the ACLU, they're on site. They're wearing vests, so you know who they are. The right has no experience with this, but he said there's another problem is with taking these cases. And he said there's a problem with optics. Then I talked to somebody else who was working with a conservative law professor. Many of these people, again, They just walked into the building. They didn't know they were doing anything wrong. They thought it was a peaceful protest. That's what got them in this trouble. This conservative law professor was trying to set them up with legal representation because these are serious charges. And he said that while there were conservative-leaning attorneys who were willing to take the cases, their law firm told those attorneys, you are not allowed to take those cases. And it's been a real problem. And, since I wrote this letter, about 5 or 6 of these individuals have reached out to me, and I have been able to get them representation. But it just seems, and here's the contrast. This is the one I mentioned earlier, is that Democrat-leaning white shoe firms in D.C. were cheerleading their attorneys going down to Gitmo to pro bono terrorists who set up bombs, killing civilians, killing U.S. troops, to represent them. And these people, these boomers who wandered through a building they shouldn't have and took a selfie with a cop smiling with them, are now facing pretty serious charges and having their whole lives destroyed, can't get legal representation. And that's absolutely abhorrent.
Republicans, man, sorry, it's the politicians, it's the leadership. They are pathetic, spineless losers. It's just that simple. They're like, oh, I'd like to represent them. Everyone deserves their day in court, but it's bad optics. Oh, okay. So when, Antifa was burning down, when Black Lives Matter was burning down cities, and Kamala Harris, the current vice president, tweeted, let's raise money to get these
them out.
People out of jail. And how many, 19 people is the official death count? It's actually substantially higher. How many people died during the riots? But as a direct result of riotous action, it's like 19. There are cops who got shot and paralyzed. And Kamala Harris literally can go on Twitter and say, hey, everybody, give money to these people who are committing acts of terrorism. And a Republican goes, that bumbling dotard of an old woman, she can't have a lawyer.
Now, just to make it clear, at Trump's inauguration, over 200 people were arrested for violence, like assaulting police officers, burning cars, burning police cars. They all had their charges dropped. All dropped. And here's what perplexes, and this is what frustrates me most. I run Look Ahead America. It's a voter registration organization, right? Why am I the one that has to write this letter?
Huh.
why? I'm just some, a few. You have helped us out by bringing publicity to it. A few others have as well. But like, where's the Republican political leadership standing up? These are their people.
I think you just explained it very simply by uttering an oxymoron. Republican leadership. Sorry, it doesn't work. You look at what Mitch McConnell was doing, were any of these Republicans fighting for, just outside of impeachment, outside of Trump, outside of this, when do they fight for anything their constituents actually want, other than just tell people, no, wait, don't?
There was only one guy who ever did that.
And who's that? Trump?
It's the president.
Yep.
I mean, look, many fair criticism of, but he never sent anybody's son off into a war that he started.
Yep. He sent a lot of drones. We have this article from the Hill. I want to pull this up. Murkowski. I don't know how Trump could be elected again. Oh, Murkowski, please. Look, this is what I tweeted. You give someone the option between a ham sandwich and you, and a lot of people are going to take it. You put up Donald Trump, who's like, I'm going to fight for you and fight for these things. A lot more people are going to take it. That's why the guy won in the first place. He increased the amount of votes he received the second time around by what, 10 million? More than 10 million, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was like 10 or 11 million, I think. Maybe more.
Historic.
And that was the most votes a sitting president ever got.
In history.
In history.
United States.
Yeah. So, and then Joe Biden, of course, the greatest president who's ever lived, sent just a ripple, a wave of charisma and energy across this nation that's really inspired everybody, garnering the most votes we've ever seen of any candidate ever. Remarkable man. His
YouTube page definitely reflects it.
It's true.
It might be signs of a trend that there are just more voters, more activated voters now since the
that's
internet.
Exactly it. Look, early on, Ian, you mentioned that there was more news, and I've been talking to a lot of people during the election. There were a ton of people I knew who had no business in politics, like just literally have never been involved, and they were so active and they knew everything, and now they're gone once again, talking about nonsensical BS. And I shouldn't be that mean. They're talking about just, hokey stuff. The movie they went and saw and how their friend, spilled a beer last night. And it's just normal stuff. But during the election, it was like, Trump is a fascist. We must stop him. Yeah. And everyone was cheering and dancing. And that was one of the one of the strategies of the Democrats and the left in terms of getting new votes, is making it a cultural movement. So that really did help. It doesn't help when the candidate they were voting for is this like bumbling old dotard who, you can't really understand when he yells, "True not a shot of pressure." But whatever, it's interesting times, to say the least.
Well, I think they took something seriously that the right has never taken seriously, which is voter registration. Putting aside, there's issues of illegal ballots. We're not going to talk about that. But after the election in Georgia, I went down and canvassed entire neighborhoods that Stacey Abrams, with the help of massive millions of dollars from people like Zuckerberg, went down and registered to vote, new voters, and turned them out. And on our side, and I say this as a nonprofit, on the patriotic side, there's nobody doing that. I mean, that's what I'm trying to do with Look Ahead. But that when people look at those astounding numbers, I used to go to a big meeting of all the people on the right, okay, nonprofit, some partisan groups, once a week in D.C. It's a very famous meeting. I'm not going to name check it. But every year at the beginning of the year, I would get up and read the statistics of, in key states, these are the number of new Democrats registered, these are the number of new Republicans registered. And the Democrats, every year, it was a substantially higher number. In all these swing states, higher and higher. And these are the White House would be at this meeting, both houses of Congress, and I would get up, I would give that little talk, I would walk into the lobby so people could come chat with me. Nobody cared. Nobody paid it any attention because they were all focused on, whatever was hot at the moment, or, some minor controversy that was long forgotten. But those are the things that pay dividends in the long run, and the left has been doing it and you're right to point it out, the left has been doing it for a very long time.
They're not only organized politically with fundraising and with getting out the vote, they're organized in terms of the ability to riot and have legal observers present. They understand when they go and riot and destroy things, they wear masks. These Trump people who went to the Capitol building were like smiling and waving for cameras, just totally oblivious to what was going on.
Yeah, really interesting insurrection where in a country where everybody can or does have an AR, they didn't bring any. Well, the karate style insurrection, right? Open hands.
Well, not even that, the smiling, bumbling, and respecting the velvet ropes. When Donald Trump was being inaugurated, 250 or so individuals got arrested, mostly wearing all black and smashing windows and starting fires. And the police had no real way to charge anyone because they were wearing masks. So what did they do? They said, conspiracy. And the judge said, are you nuts? Wearing a hoodie and a mask in public is not evidence of a conspiracy. And they tried arguing it was because you know what they were doing. We all know what they were doing, but at a legal standard, they didn't have enough. And these people all basically got released, except for those who pleaded guilty.
Yeah, they took plea agreements.
Where's the ACLU on this? I mean, I know what
With
they're tweeting.
the left, what do you mean?
I know what they're tweeting. I know that they're partisan, but historically they represented, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, individuals and groups like the KKK. They fought for important values for free speech for everyone, regardless of that speech. And now they're tweeting about genders. And you would think, but this is important here. But this is very critically important for them to understand this, because this is essentially a right to regress, a right to protest that's going to be used as a way to stop other protests in the future. And if you care about protesting, if you care about speech, if you care about this huge hammer coming down on a group of individuals, whether you like them or you don't like them, yes, there were some bad apples. Yes, there were some bad events. Yes, there was some violence. It all gets deserved to be called out. But essentially, they're setting a precedent here that's going to be very dangerous for them in the future, as of course, predictively, as I've been saying, the Biden administration is going to use this Orwellian power, not just on the right, but on the left very soon as well.
When have they ever learned about how it comes back for them? They've been demanding censorship for years, and now YouTube is cracking down on progressive YouTubers.
Yeah.
Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to see the full show, come back to this channel, youtube.com/TimcastIRL, Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., where you can leave comments and super chat, and we actually will read your comments on the show. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and if you want exclusive members-only content, segments you can't get anywhere else, go to timcast.com, become a member, and we even have full bonus episodes. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.